Good evening, everyone. I'm here today with Shamal from our Colombo office. Hey, Shamal, how are you doing?
Hi, hi Naveen, how are you?
Very
How's
good.
things over there in Australia? Heard it's property market has been really hot these days. Any specific
It
reason?
is. It is stinking hot. You're right. Yeah, I mean the reasons are the basic fundamentals. Because of all the ongoing lockdowns, people have saved a lot of money. So there's no traveling, no eating out. There's a lot of savings in people, as well as interest rates are at record low. The cash rate of Reserve Bank is still at 0.1 or 0.2%. So it's record low rates. You can't borrow money cheap as this. So that's been the main driver.
All right. And especially with the announcement of the Olympics, also we would have seen a lot of boom and developments in Brisbane as well.
Yes, I mean same thing happened to Sydney when Olympics came to Sydney in 2000. That whole area was developed, and the exact same thing is going to happen to Brisbane too. Although it's in another 12 years or 11 years, that next 10 to 11 years will be, I think Brisbane will have a very, very good ride. And especially for investors, it's time to get into Brisbane is right now, looking at the next 10 years.
Right. Okay, now so we've got a whole heap of questions coming at your end today. So let's see. Okay, question number one. This is coming from Mr. De Silva in Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
Can I invest in Australia as a foreigner, and how?
Yeah, the short answer is yes, you can invest as a foreigner. Any foreigner can invest in Australia as long as the property is brand new. So as a foreigner, you cannot invest in old properties or established properties, or if a property has occupants in it, you cannot buy that as a foreigner. And the reason for that is there's a body called Foreign Investment Review Board in Australia, which is a governing body. When a foreigner buys a property, you need to get the approval. While we take care of all that through the lawyers, which we assign for you, this is mandatory for a foreigner to buy a property. And Foreign Investment Review Board will not approve a transaction as if it is not brand new property. The property has to be brand new, and if that is the case, you can buy it as a foreigner. And how you do it, if you summarize the whole process, initially you pick a location based on your need, and then you put a reservation deposit. You sign the contracts, pay a 10% deposit or a 5% deposit based on the project you choose, and then you can settle that or complete the transaction in 6 months or 1 year, depending on the project. And it is a freehold property. Majority of the places of Australia, except for Canberra, everything else is a freehold property. So you get the property under your own name. Title will be under your own name, and it's freehold. There's lawyers involved to take care of yourself, which we will assign for you, and then if it's an investment, we will rent it out for you, manage it for you, and then resell it for you. So that we take care of the end-to-end process, but that is as a very summarized version of how you can invest as a foreigner.
Okay. Now, you mentioned there's this Foreign Investment Review Board. So there's a separate fee involved in that, or?
Yes. There is a fee of $6,350 if the property is 1 million or less. If the property is between 1 to 2 million, the fee is about $12,650. If it's 2 to 3 million, it goes up to 23,000, and so forth. So most properties which foreigners buy are below $1 million, and you would incur a cost of $6,350.
Right. So, Mr. De Silva, hope you are pretty much clear on that process, which we at Grit are taking care of on behalf of you. So we'll move on to the next question, Naveen.
Yeah.
Say, if you are looking at investing in Australia, what would be the best state and why? In terms of ROI, in terms of capital gain?
Yeah, the best states to invest right now would be Melbourne, Sydney, and Brisbane. The main reason for that is that's where the population growth is happening. The most population is in Sydney right now, about 8 million people. Next is Melbourne, and then Brisbane. Brisbane especially will be very hot as an investor right now because of Olympics, which is coming up in 12 years. There's a whole heap of developments which has been planned. And I think Melbourne and Brisbane would be the best two states to invest right now.
All right. So moving on, Naveen, this investor is looking at Melbourne. So he's asking, what is the best place to invest in Melbourne, and what is the best type of property to invest? And he's also asking, why does a lot of people in Melbourne are shifting to regional areas like Geelong and Ballarat?
Yeah, so a few really good questions there. So if someone asks where is the best place in Melbourne to invest, there's few places. There's nothing like the best place, but if you look at regional areas, Geelong is a very, very good area to invest because there's a lot of, I mean, overall, we look at infrastructure projects, we look at rentability, we look at the population growth, we look at all the government funded projects which is happening, and that's when the capital appreciation happens. So Geelong, if you look at it, there is a Melbourne to Geelong railway coming up in the next 4 to 5 years. And that's going to be a game changer because Geelong being a coastal city, it's going to be a beautiful living. People will love the lifestyle. So when that happens, a lot of predictions are in place that people will be moving to Geelong and commute to Melbourne for work. If you look at the northern suburbs, Mickleham is a really, really good suburb to invest right now. Mickleham has so much potential. Not only a lot of residential projects are going on, but also industrial and business parks are happening. So there's about 3,000 jobs which is coming up in Mickleham in the next 5 years. There's new train stations coming up, new shopping centers. So there's so much potential in Mickleham. That's if you look at the south, southeast, Clyde and Officer are really good areas to invest. There's shopping centers and new train stations coming up over there. And if you look at the western suburbs, places like Wyndham Vale, Melton, those are really good too. A quick snapshot of all around Melbourne, but any of these areas you simply cannot go wrong because the fundamentals are right. So the second part of the question was, why are people moving into regional areas? It's not only moving into, but there's a lot of transactions happening because people are investing as well. If people have moved over to regional areas, that's because of the lockdowns. Because when Melbourne started lockdowns, regional areas, there was not many cases and they were quite lenient, and people were really sick of being tied up at home in Melbourne, and they started moving to regional areas. But once things settled down, a lot of people started investing in regional areas like Ballarat and Geelong and Bendigo. Reason being the capital appreciation will be very good in the future, but at the same time, rental yield is fantastic. You're touching about 5% or more in regional areas as opposed to 4 to 4.5 in Melbourne.
All right. Hope that answered your question. Also, Naveen, we got another question coming in. How about the apartments in the CBD? Will that give me a rental guarantee as an investor? Another question from one of our viewers.
Melbourne, apartments in the Melbourne CBD, is that the question?
Yes, Melbourne CBD, it says, yeah.
Yeah. So apartments in Melbourne CBD, again, your rental is not great right now. But if you're looking at something off the plan, the reason I say that is majority of the occupants in these apartments are students. And right now, because of COVID, a lot of students have gone away. Once they come back, the rental demand will be very, very strong. I think it will be probably 6 to 18 months away. Right now, the rental demand is not great, but if you look at an apartment project which is happening in the city, but will be completed in another 18 to 24 months away, I think it will be pretty safe. The capital appreciation is not going to be high as houses, but your rental yield will be good. In terms of the Melbourne CBD, the good thing about that is there's no lands available to do new developments. So there will be a scarcity of land, and naturally the land prices will appreciate, and the apartments has to be appreciated too. There's new places like South Melbourne and Port Melbourne where people and the developers are moving into for the high rises. So once all the developments are completed in the CBD, it will be of demand. I'm talking 10, 15 years from now.
All right. So we have another question coming in. Will I get my PR or any points for my skill migration when I invest in Australian property?
Unfortunately, no. Just because you buy a property, you cannot get your PR. That's the short answer. But it'll definitely help you because it shows that you have an interest in the country. But I mean, when you're going under PR, you have to go under skill migration or business migration, and you have to have the required points and the qualifications to get the PR. So property is not going to get you the PR, but it can help you.
Does it carry any points, Navin? Any specific property? Like
not in Victoria, but in ACT or Canberra, you get 5 points when you invest over $250,000.
All right. Again, the same viewer. Can you tell me more about Canberra, the property market, and what's the best place to invest? And he's pretty much interested in looking for something in Canberra now, because you mentioned about the points.
Yeah, no, Canberra is a very interesting market. I think it's totally underestimated. Very recently, last week, Canberra median price has tipped over $1 million. So currently, Melbourne and Sydney is over $1 million in terms of the median price. Canberra median price has also reached $1 million. Canberra rental returns are the best in Australia. You're looking at 6 to 7% per annum. And the reason for that is Canberra employment is mostly government jobs, and the employment is very, very stable and solid. And the wages or the salaries is almost double of Melbourne. So the borrowing power, buying power is very, very high. And Canberra is a small city. There's so much of development happening. And again, there's so much of potential in Canberra.
All right. Hope that answered your question, Mr. Alvis. And also, Navin, Mr. Alvis is asking, how can I reserve a property? Is it apartment or a house and land which you could propose? What will be the prices? Of course, we can get back to you, Mr. Alvis, regarding that off the line. So we'll get in touch with you. And Navin, if you say how the pricing would be in properties in terms of
if he's talking about Canberra, I mean, you start prices from $320,000 up to about $500,000. It's very, very affordable. It's $1,000 deposit, 10% in 2 weeks, and then you sign the contracts, and rest is on settlement, which can happen based on their requirement. There are brand new properties which they can settle right now, or there are projects which will be completed in 2023 as well.
All right. So that's it for today, Navin. Any
There's
questions
few
coming?
more coming in. When we put the deposit in, what is our risk? That's a very good question. In Australia, developers cannot use money for their developments. So the client's money will be held in a trust account or an escrow account held by a lawyer. The money cannot be touched by anyone, not the developer, not the agents, not the lawyers. It has to be sitting in a trust account. So your risk of losing that money for whatever reason is zero. So in a typical development, your risks can be development is not going ahead, developer goes bust, and project is not being completed on time. So those are your risks. But whatever happens, even if those things happen, your money is always safe. And that's been safeguarded by law, and it's always safe. So even if the developer goes bust or if the project doesn't happen, your money can be recovered because nobody's going to use that. So that's a very good question. And another one is coming in. In terms of a construction of a house, how long will it take and what is the process? Yeah, as a typical construction of a house can only happen when you have the ownership of the land. So say, for example, we are doing a house and land package where the land gets titled or ownership transfers to you in next August. The construction can begin only by that time because as a builder, they cannot touch a land unless you have the ownership. Once that happens, that has 6 stages. One is the initial deposit of 5% where they do the drawings and initial work. The next stage is the base stage or the foundation. The concrete foundation has been laid. The next stage is frame stage where the frame has been done. So the entire frame will be done. And then the lockup. Lockup means your outer bricks are being laid. Your roof has been done. So exterior is completed. And then the 4th stage is fixed stage where all your fittings, fixtures, your plastering, all that is being done, as well as your tiling, bathtubs, tapware, pantry work, all that will be done. And the final stage is where the landscaping and all the finer touches will be done. And then there'll be independent inspections, which is happening at each stage. And then you do the handover of the property. So that's essentially it. But if you want further information, let us know. We can send you some videos. We can send you all kind of information for you to have a look. Anything else, Shama?
Nothing at my end, Navin. So yeah, so hope you got much more knowledge than you expected today regarding in terms of property investments in Australia as a foreigner, and of course for the Australians and investors globally. So Navin?
Yep. Yeah, as Shama said, hope we added some value to you. The intention is to add some value to you because these are daily, weekly questions we get from our investors. So each week we focus on a particular area. So today we're focusing on overseas investors and we were discussing all the questions we have had. Next week, there'll be another segment on another particular area. It can be Melbourne specific, Brisbane specific. But in the meantime, if you have any questions, please reach us out on Facebook or email or phone, whatever you might use. Until then, stay safe and all the very best.
Stay safe, everyone.